Welcome everyone to the Voice of the Terminus show. I'm your host Janella, joined by Josh.
Hey guys.
And we have Lexa with us.
Hello. Whatever happened to the disclaimer?
What disclaimer?
You just made an executive decision to stop running that stuff?
Yep. And in the background we have Shai with us, moderating and looking after chat while we discuss today's topic, which is looking at the producer's letter, and we'll also be looking into the recent stream, the art stream that VR put out as well. But you get the show going, guys?
Party start.
Right, so basically at the end of October...
If I say no, will you take it seriously?
No. So basically in the middle of October, 14th October, VR put out this producer's letter. And it had, it was actually a very important one as well. And it kind of set the record straight as to what's basically been happening over the last 2 years, more or less. Because if we remember back in 2019, it was, it was cast as the dark year of Pantheon for 2019. They went basically pretty much dark, and there was hardly any information out there. And its producer's letter kind of addressed what happened internally and why, things happened the way they did. So we're going to go and kick it off.
Why the excrement hit the fan.
So I'm not going to read the entire thing, the first paragraph, obviously. We'll look at the beginning. So since the official Pantheon Rise of the Fallen website was erected in spring of 2014, the project has been nearly completely driven by crowdfunding. Back in those days, it was a lot of sweat and tears. The crowdfunding, which was very much appreciated, kept the lights on. But it was a passion project for the team. That is to say, most weren't taking a paycheck at all. It was a time of pure and raw dedication to launch a classically spirited yet modern MMORPG. Staff and community united to form the early concepts, toss around ideas and start putting pen to paper. In fact, nearly the entire staff came directly from the community. This was one of Brad's many strengths, finding talent within the community. As the early stages formed, the word spread, the community rallied and grew. The excitement grew along with it. Crowdfunding picked up and some particularly excited people began making investments into the company and the game. Staff began receiving very modest pay and more people joined the team. Pantheon was by all definitions taking off. Over the next while, the game systems and concepts were implemented much through hard coding, which we'll get into in a minute. This provided content for the community to see via streams, screenshots and newsletters. 4 pre-alpha phases were held, which gave the community a chance to try out the early game and also provide the dev team data that could be used to flesh out the concepts, content and systems. This time also gave us the chance to spread the word and to reach more Pantheon fans to join our community. Crowdfunding remained solid and a couple more investments were made into the company. So that was basically the beginning of it all. And there's a word that basically came up, and we'll have Lex talk about this, the word hard coding, which was, it had a very mixed review received in that paragraph. So Lex, can you explain to us what that actually means? That one paragraph, the game systems and concepts were implemented much through hard coding. For the people out there that might not understand anything about the technology term behind it and what it's actually for. What is hard coding?
Right. So the simplest way that I can explain this for everyone to understand is, think of hard coding like chiseling something in stone. There's no easy way to change it without having to rebuild the entire client. It's a very useful tool in prototyping because you don't have to worry about adding flexibility. You don't have to worry about security, things like this, or even validation of information. So it's useful in prototyping. It is not useful for production hardly at all. because you need things to be flexible. I think here is a case of a non-programmer explaining things using programming terms to people who aren't programmers. It's like you're trying to use terminology that you shouldn't be using here, because hard coding has its place. It's just that the way it's explained is like we hard coded everything, and it's like even they're kind of cringing a little bit like that. There is no way that anybody who has spent more than a year programming would ever build an MMO entirely based on hard coding. This isn't 1999 anymore. So I think that was just a very poor choice of words. And I know there's a lot of programmers out there who, when they saw this, just basically grabbed a pitchfork and torch and was just like, don't do this. This sucks. They're all amateurs. But I think that in their rage, they seem to have forgotten that hard coding for prototyping is a very, very common occurrence. It's just that once you move from prototyping to a more production-ready code, there's a refactoring, fancy word of saying review and change of that code to make it more flexible, where you spend more time to make it efficient and everything else. That's really all it is. It's just poor choice of word.
Well, but in all fairness, though, at the beginning, you would expect them to hard code, like you said. To be able to.
You would only to prove the concepts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is pretty much what they had. We had a few sessions pre-alpha, this, that, and the other.
Right. There's also this whole process that a lot of people that either forget or are unaware of.
Mm-hmm.
In a small indie studio like this, when you first start creating your game, I suppose not necessarily game centric, but you get the idea. You usually take whatever help you can get.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's fresh out of college and he knows how to code. If he's willing to help, get him on the team. And as things progress, you get more and more experienced coders wanting to get on. And usually when that happens, the more experienced person, there's an onboarding process where you get used to the procedures and how things are done and, what standards you are holding to. And usually if you are vastly experienced over everyone else who's been there, while you're reviewing the code, it's usually your job to mark things as, this needs to be redone, this needs to be redone, because this is still prototype code. And I think that they were so hard pressed to get something out there for the fans that a lot of that refactoring steps kind of got pushed aside. I guess that's kind of our fault, or content creators or fans putting pressure on them. I guess we're kind of to blame. But there's blame on both sides in this case here. But in the end, what people need to remember is there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be bumps in the road no matter what. This is just a bump. This is just a bigger bump than most people would have expected.
So what percentage do you think had to be changed from the hard-coded stage to a more fluent stage?
I couldn't really say with any certainty, but if I had to take a wild stab in the dark, I'd probably say their player controller, because there's things like acceleration, gravity, all these things that people really do tend to use hard-coded values. And in a lot of games, it does make sense to just use hard-coded values. In an MMO where you have a lot of crazy things happening, you kind of need that flexibility. Like, let's say your character can only ever move at like 5 meters or 5 feet a second or something. Just throwing numbers there. Don't string me up over it.
Somebody clip that.
If for whatever reason someone handed you a buff and now you can move twice that fast, they would say that they'd have to probably do something funky to change that. Or maybe they've got a hard-coded value of without a buff and with a buff, right? If you were just testing to see to make sure this run speed buff worked, it would make sense to hard-code it.
Yeah.
But when it comes time to actually have it in a game, it doesn't. Because what if there's different ranks of this run speed buff? What if he's snared, or all these other things that can come into play? And it makes it a little more flexible to not have things hard coded in.
Okay. So let's carry on with this. We'll go to Project Faithar now. So as a result of the PA testing and our own listed notes and to-dos, it was very clear that to ship Pantheon sooner rather than later, we were going to need to get more parties interested, get more investment, and expand the team with more talent and skill sets beyond those of our current roster. By the end of 2018, we began work on Project Faithar, which was to incorporate all of Pantheon's systems into a playable version of the game. It was an ambitious project for our scrappy few, but it was the next logical step, and we went for it. All of 2019 and much of 2020 was used for Project Faithar. During that time, it became more and more clear that we had to get out of the old client we were using. We needed to move from hard-coded, inflexible implementations to more robust and scalable solutions. Otherwise, we would have needed to come back and redo the work again later, something that our small team could not afford to do. So I want to stop right there and talk about that last paragraph, Lex. So what do they mean by that? Basically, having to come back in and redo it again.
We know they're using Unity, right? They're using a third-party engine. They're not building their own. So whatever limitations that Unity has, they have just inherently. And sometimes you have to find ways around it. And sometimes you don't even hit these limitations until down the road because they're technically undocumented. Like, I have dabbled with Unity a little bit, and if I remember correctly, their animation controller, it might not be the case anymore. It's been a while, but I think they were like hard locked at like 100 animations, which sounds like a lot. But take your average wizard from Pantheon, okay? You've got your run, you've got a walk, you've got maybe a walk and run backwards, maybe you've got a running left and right, maybe you've got a strafing left and right, then you've got a jumping, maybe you've got a landing. Now you've got like a bunch for climbing, then you've got a bunch for your attacks, and you got a bunch for your different casting, and then maybe you get a couple different ones for when you're hit, maybe you get ones when you're knocked down. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of how many animations that you actually need. So, like I said, don't know if it's still the case, but if Unity was still hard locked at like 100 animations, that's a big problem. Because all of a sudden now you either have to go back and say, well, let's make our own, which not terribly difficult, but time that could have been better spent elsewhere in a lot of cases. Probably not this one. But, or do you start taking animations out, leaving gaps? There's not really a good solution here. You spend more time on theoretically wasting time because you have a character animator, or do you lower the quality of your animation and providing fewer animations? You're not going to make everybody happy no matter what you choose. I think personally, being a programmer, I feel like they didn't, in a case like this, they would have made the right decision to go back and remake their own character controller. Because let's say 3 or 4 expansions down the road, they add mounts. And now you have different animations for when you're on a mount. Now they have room to add them. They don't have to take old animations out, and now they can put extra emotes in. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's just, for flexibility purposes, it would have been the best choice. And that's what I'm for. And using that example, I would guess that they ran into a lot of things like this. So without going into too much detail that we frankly don't have, nor do we really have any right or any use for that kind of information, all we can really do is sit there and go, well, they probably made the best choice for their situation. And I know a lot of people out there are probably going to be, don't get me wrong, I'm feeling very impatient myself. For the love of God, just let me play this freaking game that I spent almost 5 years covering. But they got to do what's right for them. Because otherwise, they're not going to be happy, we're not going to be happy, and the game's not going to live beyond your typical MMO anymore, which is like, what, 3 to 5 years? Maybe?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us that have been following Pantheon, we want this game to last decade.
Yeah.
So let them take the time.
We just want our grandchildren to be able to play.
Right. I mean, I know I shaved all of my hair off because I'm getting a little too many grays these days, but...
Hey! Careful.
Shut up, Snow White.
Gray's great.
Maybe you got red hair. But, like I said, we don't know all the details here. Nor do we really have any right to pry and demand these kind of details, like, why did you redo this stuff? Maybe it was prototype code that just fell through the cracks and never got reviewed. Maybe it's Unity limitation. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was something that was made by an inexperienced or less experienced programmer that wasn't as flexible as they needed it to be now. Depending on how things are coded, that could mean a complete rewrite. Or maybe it's just adding a few little tweaks here and there. We don't know. A lot of us, actually, I can guarantee you that probably every content creator out there doesn't have access to the code. They probably haven't ever seen the code. Hell, half of them probably haven't ever seen an actual line of code in their lives. So we just have... We have to... I really freaking hate to say this, but this is one of the rare cases where you do have to have faith in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm the last person that has faith in anybody. But
that's true.
I've been in that programming situation where you come back to something a couple months later and you look at it and go, this no longer does what I needed to do. So I have to rewrite it. I've been there. I think every programmer's been there. And I think with this particular paragraph, most people who have programmed are going to be way more lenient than your average fan because we understand a little too well.
Yeah.
So I'll carry on. We realised that we should we continue with the then current implementation practices, we wouldn't be able to ship the game. We were backing ourselves in a corner with hard coding. Any changes had to be done by programming. All quests, all encounters, everything was hard coded into the client. Designers couldn't do implementation themselves. They needed a programmer to put it into the game for them. Not to mention the size of the code was enormous. Any new programmers coming in would have a hard time making sense of things or even knowing where to begin. Things had to change. So we stopped hard coding. We took this time to develop the actual foundation and pipelines that we were going to need to ship the game. Systems got torn out and reconstructed into a much more efficient and flexible format. Zones were harvested and replanted in expandable grey box format, which we've seen recently. Even the content such as encounters, storylines and tasks were recreated in freshly built tools to empower designers. From the earlier versions, we gained insight as to where these systems needed to go and how they needed to be built. This is what was needed to move forward, to get the game built in a way that could be rapidly built upon the wasted effort from development and to scale to the size of the project that Pantheon is meant to be. The prior versions of the game couldn't do that. It added to the timeline of Project Faithal, but it was well worth it. This is the architecture that will take us through to launch and allow designers, current and future, to be able to add content easily, effectively and efficiently. This will become more and more clear over the next months as you see more rapid development taking effect. So Lex, there's one thing I would like you to explain as well. They talk about designers and programmers. So explain there what that basically means. You know, what's the difference there? You know,
sadly, I'm in a very unique situation where I understand this 100%. I am a game designer for another title. I'm not going to do a shameless plug here because most of you know what it is anyway. I'm also a programmer. What they're basically saying is just because a designer may not necessarily be a programmer. So let's say you come up with an idea of a mechanic. Let's say it's the climbing mechanic. Well, even if you theoretically know how it works, say you know all the game lingo too, like raid casts and all that stuff. You understand that. That doesn't mean that you can implement it. I mean, what they're basically saying here is that we're taking time to give the designers more power so that they can take some load off of the program. Even if you were an environmental designer, just because you can build a level doesn't mean you can put it in the game. They might need one of the programmers or one of the Unity experts to import that into the game, and then do all this stuff like fix all the lighting, fix some of the texture, set up your collisions, things like that. Things that an environmental designer may not necessarily understand, let alone know how to do. So again, this is another very smart move, if a little late to the party, because I think I said it in one of our last streams where we are now where we should have been probably 2 years ago, and that still holds true. We are, but maybe I'm a little more willing to chalk this up to growing pains. Because while, yes, they do have some very experienced people on their team, not everybody's experienced in game development. That's what a lot of people forget. I think it was their senior programmer. The guy's been in making MMOs and game stuff for decades, but he doesn't run the show. And anyone who's been in a position where you work under a supervisor or a boss or whatever, you do what your boss tells you. You can make suggestions, but in the end, if they say still you have to do that, then that's what you're doing. I think it's a very, very good move that is promising for faster progress.
Yeah.
So we'll move on. The importance of Pre-Alpha 5. As this brings us to Pre-Alpha 5, the current stage of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, PA5 is an incredibly significant stage of development in many ways. We are now working from the solid foundation of a well-architectured game client and more comprehensive, efficient pipelines due to the work done during Project Faithal. Pre-Alpha 5 is the culmination of Project Faithal. By the end of PA5, the game will encompass the actual feel of Pantheon. It includes more systems. There is still a chance that we may need to hold off on some systems for this stage depending on timing and resources, and it will include a full progression path from 1 to 50. Even though we want PA5 to offer a full adventuring gameplay experience for Pantheon, it is still a pre-alpha phase. It is not content complete, and all zones outside of big sections of Faithal are in a grey boxed state. Previously seen zones like Thronefast and Avendyr's Pass have been redone to grey box spec to allow for the proper pipeline and optimization. Secondly, the experience is needed so it can be shared with potential partners. Publishers and investors need to see what Pantheon is, how it plays, what it's all about. Several parties are interested in the concept, and now we need to show them that it's a reality. We are and always will be internally grateful for the kindness and generosity of the community and our early investors in getting us this far. But we're going to need more resources to get Pantheon done sooner than our modest team can realistically do by themselves in a reasonable time frame. PA5 serves as a testing area for the evaluation build. Testers can help in putting the best possible experience in the hands of the people who can accelerate development the most. Lastly, PA5 lays the foundation for alpha, so it's grey box and not art complete, but the PA5 testers' feedback at this stage directly affects the experience of the alpha testers coming in. There are a lot coming, and we want to make sure they have a complete experience to test.
All I can say is the thanks for the generous, and all that. That certainly wasn't aimed at me. I am when I find bullshit, I call bullshit, and I am not kind about it. But yeah. I can tell you first. We've already talked about the PA5 shakeout experience.
Yeah.
I can tell everybody firsthand as a programmer because I'm a little more sensitive to certain things. The quality of the client is leaps and bounds above what it was. Like I cannot even tell you how smooth animations are. I can't tell you how smooth the loading is because it's almost seamless. Whereas before it felt like an older game, which was fine because all of us were wanting the old school kind of throwback. While that still is a possibility to have that feeling in Pantheon now, we certainly have a client that feels more like it's a modern built or modern engineered client because it just feels good.
I also think that at this stage, I think they're realizing that through the frustrations of the fans and a lot of things happening and things not moving as quickly as they'd like, getting bigger investors is paramount now. So they can start moving quickly, maybe hiring more people maybe as well to start moving this along a lot quicker. And thus, I think this is the reason for the direction that they've gone in now to get more money.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like building a car. Okay, if you build a car, you're probably just, especially if it's your first car, you're probably just happy that the damn thing moves forward. That's basically the old client. They were just happy that the damn thing worked. But now you're at the point where you need people to help buy these super expensive engines and transmissions and all this other performance parts, right? You want to put yourself behind the wheel, something with some turbochargers and all that, but you can't afford it. So you need to prove to people who are willing to put the money into this that what you're going to make is going to be mind-blowing.
Yeah.
You can't do that with a car that you're just happy moves forward. You need something that shows that there is potential here. Like, it could already get 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, so we put some more money into this thing and it's going to just leave fire behind it like a DeLorean out of a certain movie. That's essentially...
we're going to get a copyright claim now because you just mentioned that, right?
Because I mentioned DeLorean.
Stop it!
DeLorean?
DeLorean was a make-up car, so was great with that.
Yeah, and it's defunct. The company's defunct, so... Well, actually, no, GMC isn't, but... Basically, the whole DeLorean era is gone, or whatever.
Alright, so I'll carry on. The PA5 plan. The 2 shakeout sessions are now behind us and helped identify several key issues we needed to address on the account login server level and in some of the systems. And now we are ready to begin pre-alpha 5. This is the arc of the Pantheon legacy thus far. The end of PA5 is where it all comes together in a playable game. It is the part where Rocky stops at Father Carmine's to get a blessing on his way to the fight. Pre-Alpha 5 is a collaboration between dev team and the community. The dev team has the advantage of rapid iteration to help get us to alpha quicker. And the testing community can help get us to alpha by testing productively. PA5 is a multi-session phase. Each session will have new features and or content to test. Due to the updated client and pipelines, development during this phase will be much more rapid than in the past. So there will be substantial differences between builds. For example, Shakeout had 2 available playable classes. The next session will have 4 and include several new systems. More on this later to our pre-alpha testers. Zones will be added over these sessions as well. By the end of PA5, you can expect to see a 1 to 50 Pantheon experience, as I mentioned already, with all classes available and most systems for launch in place. PA5 proper was a term that caused more confusion than it was meant to, so we are no longer going to use it. It was a reference to the bulk of PA5 sessions. Please do not expect all PA5 to be available on the first session. It's just not possible, which is understandable. You know,
right?
And it makes more sense to do it in strides and implement the systems step by step to see how they're working and how they kind of like collaborate with each other, rather than just putting everything in one bang and then having to deal with tons of other stuff or tons of different areas at once, right?
You can take it in steps. Mm-hmm. That's a smart thing to do.
Yep.
Yeah. But like they mentioned, like, you know, there was a little bit of fumbling with the wording of PA5 sessions.
Yeah.
And I agree. Like, the shakeout thing, to me, it meant something completely different. And I was confused. There's been a lot of confusion, and I don't know if that's I don't know if the confusion is a process of them making improvements, and they're just in transition, so they're just really not sure which way to swing it yet, which, that's fine. I get it. I really do. Or if it really is just a case of, like, we don't know what's going on, which would be very bad. I'm hoping for the former and preparing for the latter.
So I'll finish off this section because it's just basically more information for everybody. Early sessions will be shorter, usually 2-3 hours, give or take, depending what needs testing. Expect these types of sessions to occur roughly every several weeks for the most part to start. There may not always be a need for external testing, so the schedule is evaluated internally on a weekly basis. As testing continues, the game becomes more stable and more fun, leading to more sessions and more flexibility. A large number of the testing sessions will be focused on specific areas of the game, but as we progress, the realms will open up to more open and organic gameplay for some sessions, so the testers can just play Pantheon organically every once in a while, which I think is the right way to go about it. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of testers would have loved to have from the start, is have testing give us focuses on what they want tested. I think that was one of the main things that a lot of people strive to have.
That was one of my big bitching moments.
Yeah, not just aimless wandering and nonsense like that. Yeah.
Because you know, I'm not there to play the game. I'm there to test it. I'm there to help, try and find bugs and you know, give them feedback.
Now, everybody who's out there who may not be in PA5, you know, or who's never done testing, imagine where you're supposed to be testing a video game, something that's for your entertainment, but they don't tell you what should be done. Don't even give you a hint. What are you going to do? You're going to play the game.
Exactly.
Everyone would do the same thing, so don't feel bad. Don't even try to lie about it, because everyone would do the same thing. I would do the same thing.
Yeah.
So for the longest time, it really felt like you know, the VIPs were not really testers.
Yeah.
I still am on the fence about that, but for the most part, they haven't. Because it was literally like, oh, look, you guys can log in. Okay. What do you want me to do?
Yeah, exactly. It was more about being appeased, basically, pre-alphas.
Right. I mean, I have a notebook that is full of my testing checklist. And it's like, so let's just go over all this again. Should I really go through my 314 items again when you could just tell me what's been changed and I can either move on to that, or I can recheck anything that was relevant to that.
Yeah.
You know? So by the time PA5 hit, or PA5 Shakeout hit, I was kind of like, just threw my notebook up in the air and be like, okay, whatever.
Right.
Like, well, we didn't know what we were supposed to do. And there are some really great communities out there who have a lot of VIPs who actually took it upon themselves to coordinate their own testing. Like, you guys are going to test this. You guys are going to test this. Okay, you guys are going to work on this stuff. And that's great. That's exactly what Pantheon needed. But they couldn't reasonably expect everybody to do that. Because, especially with these smaller sessions, a lot of us, myself included, scrambled just to make them. I mean, I had to call people I had to push appointments and stuff to where people were just like, really? Are you really going to push it back by an hour? And it's like, yes, if I can. I made a lot of enemies on the testing days, but so I never had time to really coordinate testing. I still did my own personal testing, but the way I do testing may not be the same way someone else does testing. Neither are more efficient than the other. One's designed to catch some certain things, the other way is designed to catch other things. It's just that when you don't have a purpose, you're just praying to God that everyone's doing something different. So I'm hoping that they've learned. It sounds like they've learned from their mistakes. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and hope to see a little more direction.
Yeah. So I left out the last portion, which basically just explains what they're currently looking for and what they expect from the testers. There's no need to read that down. So the future. Now on to Alpha. We do not have these dates as yet, as there are a lot of systems and content to test in PA5, and PA5 will last as long as it takes. We certainly are not going to spend years in PA5. But we will spend the time we need to get the game in a state where it is playable. A playable, enjoyable game that covers a full progression path from 1 to 50. We are actively taking steps to improve our communication with you, so please know that when we are nearing the completion of PA5, we will make it abundantly clear. In the meantime, even if you are not a pre-alpha tester, we will be sharing the progress with you routinely. We say it a lot, but we can't say it enough. Thank you all once again for your support. We are a small team without the kind of funding that some other studios are able to start with. Only through your continued support have we been able to get to this point. This is as much your game as it is ours. We are all in this together, and thank you from the bottom of our hearts. So basically, we know that there has been a great deal of confusion around Project Phaethon Pre-Alpha 5. We did a poor job at communicating the nuances. And the amount of work that was needed to get us into the workable state we are in now, which left you in a long period of wondering what was going on. We cannot undo that, but we want to do better going forward. So our deepest and sincerest thank you to those of you who stuck through it, and to those of you whose belief in us has wavered. We hope through our actions we can earn your confidence again. We're crazy excited about where we are now. Amazing things are ahead, and we want to share this experience together. After all, taking the journey with friends, isn't that what Pantheon is all about? Ben Dean, project producer, Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. And that's a pretty big statement, coming out with this producer's letter and basically saying this is what happened, and owning up to the miscommunication, having a lack of communication, something that yes, we've talked about this on and on again, but now they finally they've realized that, hey, yes, there's been miscommunication, and hopefully with what they've said here, they stick to it, that they do start showing routinely updates, more insight into the game. I mean, there are a few things that they spoke about in this letter that have just got me really excited, and I want to know more about it, like talking about the tools added into the storytelling of the game, to the encounter mechanics. Those are definitely things that I would like to know more about, and I'm sure you guys as well.
Yeah. I think it was a good move by them. I think it was 6 months overdue to get a letter like this to us, the public and the fans. And at least they did it and got it through to us. So kudos to them. Well done. I think that if we get this kind of transparency going forward now, I think everybody will be a lot happier.
Yeah. This is actually like, okay, everybody knows that I'm very hard on VR.
Mm.
I'm like that parent who's hard on their kid because they want them to succeed. That's pretty much how it is. This producer's letter has basically been yeah, we screwed up. We know it. We're going to take strides not to do it again. It takes an awful large amount of balls to be able to go in front of a community of thousands, being 5 years into a project, saying, we kind of screwed up.
Yeah. And
it's very easy to jump on their back and start screaming about how you would have done better, how you should have done this, and how you should have done that.
Yeah.
That's the very easy route to go. But I've got a lot more respect for someone who's willing to say, you know what, I oopsed.
Yeah.
I know I made a mistake. I don't want to make this mistake again. I'm going to do my best to not make it again, but also try to make it up to you.
Well, that's the thing, though, Lex. Right? It's no different to real life when you have your job. If you've made a mistake or screwed up, it's better to own up to it rather than try and hide it for as long as you possibly can, but then to be found out, and the uproar is going to be just twice as big, and it's going to be so damaging. And like you said, it takes guts, and especially, this is something that is most probably is almost precedent to the gaming industry.
Right.
This is.
I can't think of another studio that's ever said that we screwed up.
Well, they did. We've had that, but the problem is it's happened after the fact that it got found out.
Usually, it's own up to it now because you're already getting bad.
Yeah, and
the torches are already lit.
Yeah, and they came out basically and set the record straight. Period. They owned up to the mistakes. Yeah. They got ahead of it before it was found out by other people or whatever. Because that's how it normally is. All these other companies that like it's like with EA or whatnot with their scandal and this, that, and the other. The only reason that came to the day of light is because
ends in Y.
Is why it came to light and why they basically had to go out. And most of the time, though, these apology letters aren't taken seriously. This one is.
Right. Well, I mean, I do say that they do get a lot of respect from me for basic owning up to it. But the thing is, when this came out, the entire community is kind of at a crossroads where everybody had their own speculation on what was going on. It was getting harder and harder to fight off the trolly little basement masturbators because they had more ammo than we did. We didn't.
I've now got to. Thanks, Lex.
What?
I've now got to. Not suitable for kids.
When have I ever been suitable?
Dad,
for kids?
what's masturbators?
Oh, it's when you're when you're really good at putting worms on a hook for fishing.
Oh, thank you, Lex.
As long as you say it with a straight face, you're good. But anyway,
that's more than 5 people in a room that debate a lot. Yeah.
Oh, really good at it. But I mean, you could look at it as their hand was forced. I'm just glad they did it sooner than later, and they didn't come up with some BS story to run around the issues. They actually said, here are the issues, and that's it. Where you get the usual, we're sorry, we're going to try and make it up to you. That's a given. Everyone's going to say that. And I say that in a doubting fashion because say it all you want, do it.
Yeah, it has to be done.
If you do, yeah, because if you don't do it, then I can't be bothered to care anymore.
because it's one of those things, right? It's like you said, it took balls to do this, but it's going to take more balls to actually own up to it and actually work from that and learn from that.
Right.
Because this is where I see a point now. You've come out and owned up to a mistake, and you want to do better. Now there's going to be more critical eyes viewing this. If they, if they go dark and go silent for 6 months all of a sudden, then
game over.
Game over. This will not hold any value. So it's going to be ultimately important for them to be more open, like Josh said, be transparent, show more progress, show some of the things that they're working on. I mean, we already talked about this before we went live anyway. Show off progress of what they're working on. They don't need to stream out the game.
That I'll save my input on this one until after we talk about the video newsletter.
Yeah.
Because it's very, very closely related.
Yeah, so we'll actually go into that first, and then we'll basically talk about that. So we're going to have a look at the video newsletter, which they put out. And we'll have it without audio. But we're going to fly through this. So they basically had a talk on there, the senior environmental artist, talking about what they've been up to and what's basically happened. And it kind of explained the grey boxing, why they're grey boxing and what's behind it. So I'm going to scroll through this in strides. They showed us some concept art. And it's basically kind of explaining how they're getting to these zone builds and what's behind it and how big the world is.
Can you change the playback speed on YouTube?
I do not know.
I'm almost positive you can. Don't ask me how, I don't ever do it. So if you can, just speed it up to like 2 or 3 times.
I'll have a look. Can I speed it up? Somebody help me.
Learning with Yarn. Try right-click on the video, see if something pops up.
Have a look.
Or... Oh, there you go. Tech Ninja saying it's the setting button.
Setting button.
For a cogwheel or some garbage.
Hit the setting button.
There we go. There's a setting, play speed. We'll go twice as fast. So we'll leave that running twice as fast. So they're showing off a new tool that they're using, which is called Houdini. So Lex, you want to quickly talk about Houdini while the people see this in super fast speed? I think it's a bit too fast. I'll slow it down a
bit. That's how you work fast.
Yeah.
Houdini is basically a development tool for game development. It just really helps making your assets. It can help you make worlds. I haven't had a chance to really play with it too much yet. But everyone that I have talked to that uses it or has looked into it really like it. I believe it's free. There might be packages for higher levels of support.
There's a free version basically for the learning it.
But I've seen things where like they can procedurally create assets for you based upon certain parameters. Like say you make a bridge. Well, you can have that wooden bridge look like a rickety old bridge, and the longer you stretch that bridge, the more planks are across, rather than stretching it, which is great. It makes things way easier because you don't have to make a separate bridge of a certain length. You can just stretch it, and Houdini takes care of the rest. It's one of these things that it takes time to implement, and it takes time to figure out how to use it right for your project, especially when you're 5 years in almost. It's not over. But in the case of Houdini, it can save you months on top of months on top of months of work. So where let's say a zone, and we all know Pantheon zones are very large. Let's say it takes the environmental artist 6 months to make it in Unity. Using Houdini, he can probably cut that down 2 months, or maybe even a month. And then maybe a couple weeks to add the assets, paint the assets on and paint the ground, all that stuff, all the little fine details. And you to have something that would take half a year compressed down to like a tenth of a year. If this is one of the reasons why progress seems slow, I think it's a perfectly valid reason.
Mm.
In this case, it is a tool that is absolutely worth using. The gains far outweigh the costs. The only thing that I would like to mention, though, is that they need to be very careful that they don't get into this pattern of constantly adding new tech. We saw that with Vanguard, and we all know how that ended.
Mm.
So I just hope that whoever's in charge of like vetting the tools is doing their due diligence and making sure that just because it's flashy and nice to use and all these other people swear by it, that when they bring it into their arsenal of tools, there's more to gain rather than just being like, oh yeah, we use it.
Mm.
Yeah.
So they showed off, basically the tiling system that they have with Houdini. That basically gives them a ton of data. Every little inch, basically, of that tile is shown, the different height maps and everything, which is really interesting. Especially for people that are, programmers or designers, it's a very powerful tool that basically will automatically, like you said, add in certain assets based on its projection where the height map is.
Yeah, it can add almost incalculable amounts of value to your arsenal of tools. And there's not many tools out there that can do that. But Houdini is not. I think it's not an old tool, but it's not a new tool either. So I'll quickly want to pause it in a minute because I thought that when he showed this off, I thought I want to see that in game. The scar. When I saw him take that scar model and put some mountainsides around it, I thought, yes, that is something I definitely want to see in Pantheon.
Yeah,
I think that would be absolutely epic.
We will call it Mount Lexer.
So, I mean, it's really interesting to see the power of Houdini by taking a asset model of a race, of a class, or whatever, flipping it, and then just going, right, I'm going to tile this and create a landscape with it. So, yeah, I mean, it looks pretty cool. I would like to see that coloured, please, in full colour. So, side project.
Chop, chop.
Show us that, what it looks like when it's finished. But it does seem that with Houdini they can do a lot more. There's
a lot of things that Houdini does, like this projection, that you don't need Houdini to do, but Houdini makes it much quicker to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen this video yet, definitely go out. We'll put the link in. If somebody could grab the link to that video and put it in chat, that would be much appreciated. So they're now showing off or talking about the assets they were using, the stone assets and such. And VR actually went in. And VR actually went in and designed their own assets. And basically moved away from what Unity had to offer due to the level of detail and everything, so that they could basically get much more done in a faster means. And on the screen now you see basically him creating this is basically Faith Isle that they put on top. They had a grey box basically built which kind of designed like mountainsides and everything, and Houdini basically just put it all together and added grey box assets, the color schemes and everything for them. where's water going to be, this, that, and the other. So that's the power of what Houdini can do. It can help them create the world a lot faster and more efficient, and give them valuable data, because they could basically take that and make minor changes and put it somewhere else in the world, and we wouldn't be none the wiser, basically. So that's what Houdini allows people to do, and it's definitely a tech worth taking on and spending the time to implement and learn. But obviously that took some time as well, I would presume, Lex.
It does. It does take some time, even with like documents, tutorials, and support and all that. It still takes time, because take learning something that's very technical, and then you're gonna have to go back to your references because you can't remember everything. It's still just one of those. It's one of the few tools where I say, if anyone were to come to me and say, I'm this far in development, but should I do this? It's like, well, unless you've only got 2 or 3 zones or 2 or 3 assets to go, then I wouldn't. But otherwise, yeah, if you've got a long ways to go, then absolutely take the time to implement Houdini.
So basically, where we are now is currently where he explained these 4 bricks basically being zones. One being Avendir's Pass, one being Black Rose Keep or whatever, one being Halnir's Cave, and the other one being, Thronefast or whatever. Basically, what Houdini would allow them to do now is, if they're placing this down on the world and moving it about, that would have caused problems for them without Houdini. They wouldn't be able to move it or flip it, and that's what Houdini allows them to do. Houdini will basically figure out or mash together the difference. It would basically automatically set itself, and they'll be able to modify it with a few clicks, and that's something
migrate from one to the other in a semi-smooth fashion. So you would see like the ground transform from, let's say, forest to a desert.
Because basically, normally when you build your zone, it's there. It's got its position. You can't take it and turn it around and do this and do that. You'd have to do that zone from scratch, or copy it and then modify it and make changes and upon changes. And Houdini allows them to do that basically almost seamlessly. But
yeah, it's one of those tools that I got to sit down with for an afternoon, just
mess around with it. Eh? Yeah. Yep. Maybe Talk can do some tutorials.
No, because if he's doing tutorials,
he's got no time designing the game. Well, hey, he was working on some side projects. He said it himself, so he must have plenty of time.
I need to cut that shit out. Yes, it's a joke.
If you're watching this, yeah.
If you are watching this, stop watching this. Get back to work.
So an interesting one was
he said kindly.
I mean, Sleepless, that zone, I can't wait to see that. They basically showed off a time lapse of creating the rocks that they had, and he'll get to this in a minute, and God, it looks great. It really does look good. Seeing these assets.
Well, we've seen that raid encounter kind of in progress with Ko.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a raid that it's going to be very odd to hear that. I'm probably not going to get tired of it.
Yeah.
I'd probably do it. I mean, I'm assuming there's going to be a lockout, so you can't just constantly go back, or if it's an open world, then it's going to be like a respawn timer on them. But it'll one that I'll probably gladly do over and over again.
It's one you can only do once. Once you succeed,
I'll find it.
Once a month.
I will roll characters, run that raid, and then.
Oh, didn't you read the notes? Sleepless is only going to be like a one-time thing. It's going to be in for a short period of time and then it's gone. We'll never come back.
The hell it is.
But they're showing like how this is all made, and so for people out there that are interested in what goes behind game design and and all the work and everything, environment and all that lot. This is definitely a very interesting video to watch, because it also gave me a lot of insight and understanding as well as to what actually happens and why. I mean, look at these, what do they call them, crystals?
Sure.
Yeah, we'll call those stone crystals or whatever. They look freaking awesome. I don't know
what it is, but I'm gonna lick it.
Yeah,
they look amazing.
They do. They look great. They look absolutely great. And from going
like crystallized blood,
going from the concept art to what they have created from it is just phenomenal. So here we see on the left side, you'll see the Unity, or these are the Unity rocks that they've been using. You can see the scale of the character models. There's a few missing there, by the way. Where's the Darkmere? I don't think... Was the Arkai in there? I think he was, yeah. And these are the rocks now that they've basically created. Which they've, they obviously have different tones.
I really hope that they change the outline of the gnome to be a little more like a mist, because I hate that bubble look.
Yeah.
I know I'm being picky and stupid, but it's just, it looks so weird. It's like they're a water balloon.
It goes. It's one of those characters that, like, you look at it and go, this doesn't fit the theme. Everybody else looks, the way they look fantasy-like, and this one looks like just completely sci-fi.
Yeah. I think if they were to just soften the edges, because the edges are very hard on it, and I know it's supposed to be like, their essence is contained, but I don't know. I enjoyed it more when they were like kind of smoky and glowy with the bandages. I just felt they needed more than just bandages.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna play a gnome anyway, so whatever.
So the interesting thing about their own created assets, these rocks for instance, is if they're rotated, which is going to show basically, if they're rotated, moved into a different position, the moss or the snow or whatever is covering it automatically adjusts itself to where it should technically be. Am I explaining that correctly, Lex?
Yeah, it's almost relative to the world. So, like, snow is always on top, grass is always on top. So when they rotate that, things kind of get retextured.
Yeah.
I guess is the easiest way to explain it. But, oh my god, does that look bad watching it. just seeing the process going is just like, oh, can't watch that.
Why not?
Don't get me wrong, it's very neat. But all I do is see textures moving.
Yeah. And they showed off how, basically how they're going about dungeon building, and basically, how it's technically done. You have boxes, and then you create your different shapes of boxes, your tunnel, your entrance, basically, your L shape, your T junction, your main area, this, that, and the other, and from there you basically just add in your assets, and well,
there's two ways to do it. You can do it in the tile way, like they're doing here, where you're just kind of making tiles and you snap them together. Or I don't know how much they do it anymore, but there's a lot of people who do, like, say, an underground zone. They'll actually carve it out of like a cube. I mean, one's better for modularity, so that you can quickly use similar pieces to create different areas. Smart way to do it on a small team. But if you were to just like carve it out of a cube to make your tunnels and all that, you get more uniqueness but less reusability.
And he's basically showed some of the additional assets that they built, and they put those into the boxes, and you can basically see how it takes shape, form, and what they possibly can do with it. So, and it already looks very interesting, even if it is grey boxed and whatnot. But so I'm going to stop it here now, and we'll talk about the patch notes as well, because there's two things that were mentioned from Jopper that were very, very interesting as well. So he talked about the client build size being reduced by 75.9% with the optimizations they made. And,
which will mean very little to most non.
So can you explain? So explain that, what that basically means, and what that possibly, how it possibly came to that.
There's a lot of different ways you can achieve that. The reason you want it is just because, while it's easier to deploy, for one, there's less data that has to go across the lines. It's smaller assets, depending on how they have everything packaged. I don't know if they're going to try and package everything one way or another, so it's hard to make that call. But to me, as a technical person, that says that they've cut out a lot of useless stuff, and they've swapped to things that can be reused in smart ways, which is great, because that means less work, more result. I mean, it could also mean that they're just compressing the living bejesus out of everything, but I doubt that is the case.
But I mean, 75% is massive,
huge.
Right? It's huge.
Huge.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they had.
Think about it in terms of gigabytes. You went from I'm just going to round it here. I'm going to say you go from 1 gigabyte file, right? Now you're cutting that down by 79%. Think about that. That's like just a couple hundred megabytes. That's massive.
And the other one was basically the RAM as well.
Resource usage.
Yeah, resource usage was 21%.
Yep, that's good too, because not only does that mean it's more accessible to computers that may not have a whole lot of spare resources. Like, I'm pretty sure, I know that the average home PC now is probably running like 8 gigs of RAM, something completely different from 5 or 6 years ago. But I'm a big advocate of, just because they have the resources doesn't mean you should always use them, because you don't know what the usage of people's computers like. For instance, if I have a PC that I use for work, starting browsing at home and all this other stuff, and I play a game, my antivirus and all this other stuff might be going. I might have a browser up. It's just weird. But again, this tells me that they're cutting out a lot of useless stuff. I don't want to say optimizing, but I guess it's the best word, is that they're more or less optimizing the memory usage. And that's a good thing. I mean, that's going to improve performance. That's going to improve accessibility, both of which are absolutely needed for MMO.
Yeah.
So, before I started towards the end of the producers news there, I wanted to talk about, this kind of stuff that they showed off. And this was definitely very interesting to see for people that are interested in this kind of stuff. But this is something that we definitely need to see more of. But we need to see more of the progression of where they, where they've come from and where they're heading. And Lex, you wanted to basically wait until we showed off the stream. So, what's your take, basically? How do you see it going forward for VR? What would you like to see more of?
Well, I got to get this off my chest. The whole art process stream, I'm not going to say it was a bad stream. It was a good stream. It was a very informative stream. I learned a couple. I like learning some things. It's just what I like. Was it an overly interesting stream for your typical fan? No. Was it necessarily the best move right now? No. Because you just did a producer's letter saying that we made a mistake, we're working really hard to correct it, we're going to be making more progress, it's full steam ahead. And what you end up doing is kind of give us a space filler stream of like, this is how things are done now. Which, don't get me wrong, it does fill more technical people with confidence, myself included. But what the fans really need to see right now is actual progress. They need to see things that they're familiar with and how they're better. So what I would do, maybe not next, but at least soon, is I would show older zones. Like the Tower of the Reckless Magician. Remember that, guys? That thing that kind of just disappeared on us?
Mm-hmm.
It would be nice to see where it was, what kind of average frames you were getting, on a a moderate PC, and then compare it to where it is now. Show us, because gamers relate to things using frames. So we basically say, this is what we had, these are the frames. We'll say 40 frames a second. Now you go over to the new version. It's visually appealing over the old one. There's a lot more stuff going on. Things run smoother, at least it appears that, and the frames are higher. So now you've got people who are concerned about graphics happy, because an old zone, no one's going to be happy about, oh look, they just redid a new zone. But you're giving them actual proof, saying that there is a good reason. Because you went from not as much fidelity, 40 frames, to much more fidelity, which to some people equates to more immersion. And maybe you're getting 60, 70, or even 80 frames now. You've hit the technical people, the visual people. I mean,
they don't
a smart move.
And they don't even need to always do a stream session of showing what they've done. They could take screenshots or do something similar to what they did in this recent stream with the how they built those rocks for the Sleepless Zone, a time lapse. Show off things like this. That this is what it looked like before we did the whole Houdini and revamp or whatever. And this is what this is where we progress, because talking about how you're getting there is not what people want to see now. They want to see the progression.
There are people that want to see this.
Oh yeah, of course there are, but the majority though of the normal people would like to see the progression. I'm fine with seeing this kind of stuff. I could sit down every week and watch this stuff.
Even the producer's letter, though this was a much needed, admission of mistake. It has endeared VR to a lot of people. But that doesn't make anything right. What we need to see is reasons that this is being made right.
Yeah.
We don't need to see the process right now. It may feel like this is the proper step.
Yep.
Because we're saying it's better. We're showing you how it's better. And then we're going to show you that it is better. It's like, no, you've made so much of a mess. You've basically shaken the hornet's nest so many times already, through the missteps, through the lack of communication or bad communication, that you need to skip that middle step right now and just get to the proof.
Yeah.
Prove it to people once and for all, definitively. There is progress.
You made a good statement earlier on, Josh, before we went live, which is kind of interesting. You basically said you need to apologize to VR because you did not know, after reading the producer's letter, what they had gone through, and that's basically it. That's basically it. You were not in the know of what was going on, and while we're patient and we understand a lot of things and support VR, there are others out there though that aren't that patient, and if they would have known what was going on when it was meant, when we needed to know, I think people would be a lot more lenient. And it's interesting to see a statement like that being made, Josh. So what was your thinking behind that?
Well, basically it was, we've gotten very frustrated over the period of time, not seeing anything, because we felt that VR were dragging their heels, be it through lack of manpower, lack of knowledge, and just it felt as if they just really didn't give a damn when they wanted to actually get the game out. When this letter came out and they explained that they had to basically redo a whole lot of stuff because they needed to streamline things to make things a lot better, then it actually made sense. It made sense why they were why it was taking such a long time, because it obviously, to redo these type of things and to create a better version of the game was something that needed to happen in order for us not to get a lemon at the end of the day and to get something that would be good. So it was a case of, okay, maybe I was too hasty in my judgment of VR in thinking that they were
but but that's the thing though, right? Even the people like us, like the VOT or anybody else that's out there, the content creators and everything, we've been so patient. But if if our cages are rattled and you come to that kind of conclusion, what do you think about the normal person out there who's only looking in every now and then? That's he's got an interest to it. His thinking is going to be twice as harsh. He's going to look once.
When you think about it, you go back to a game that you're moderately interested in, but you've been burned before. You don't want to go back.
Yep.
You don't want to get your hopes up. You come back like 3 months later, and nothing has changed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to fill you with just an awful amount of dread.
Yep. So it's definitely.
But again,
go on next.
I'm going to be a little harsh here. Surprise, surprise. But I'm saying this with a hope that the producer's letter holds true and things are going to change. Take the VIP community, right? Now, you would think that during these struggles they would have informed the VIP community to help endear us, to make the VIPs feel like we're in this fight together, right? I'm not going to go as far as to say to do it with the community, because I'm pretty sure a lot of VIPs would send me some pretty nasty things from suggesting that to just make them part of the regular community. That you do this, we're in this together. They've said that we're kind of in this together. Yet when there's anything that might come across as negative, they're just like, oh, don't tell anybody. It's like, then we're not really in this together. And I'm not saying that you really should give all the bad details, but this is a bad little road bump that. Sorry, I said look. No, it wasn't a little road bump. It was a big road bump that affected everybody, but wasn't addressed until recently. That's not endearing. That's infuriating. And being a content creator, I guess some people would say that content creators are part of the community leaders group, I guess. That it's almost our jobs to always stay positive. But it's not. Our job is to relay information that we have for whatever means and relay it to the community. But it's also our job to look out for the community's best interest.
Yeah.
Because if Pantheon succeeds, we're not getting a damn thing. If it fails, all we've done is basically told the community, hey, we just spent 5, 4, 3, 2, 8, 5, 10, 20 years on something that failed. So, and
then the thing is, we go on to the next project and the next, and it fails as well, and then people start seeing the puzzle forming. They see a pattern. Hey, it's these guys. Anything that they get interested in, don't.
That's the thing. Can any of us content creators or community leaders or whatnot, can we all unanimously say, "Geez, English, please"?
Do you speak any English?
No, I don't. Can we all come together and actually agree that we're in this fight together with VR? Yeah. No, we can't. No, because you would be flat out lying. And that sucks. It really sucks. Because you want to be in this fight. You want to be there to help them, but they won't take the chance to let you in on the fight.
Yeah.
And I just hope things change.
So, Ixmoko's asking basically when they basically started on this Houdini. If I understood correctly during the stream, it's recently come in. If I understood the stream correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong, VR. But it sounded like it was October when they had it fully implemented and nailed down. They've obviously had it in the works for a couple of months maybe now or whatnot. I don't know, but they do mention, Dropper does mention talking about it being fleshed out by at the end of October or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong though, guys.
The process of implementing and familiarizing yourself and integrating it into your pipeline for something like Houdini, because it's such a widely adopted tool, it wouldn't have taken a crazy amount of time. We're talking maybe a couple months. I think what took most of the time is going back and realizing how much prototype code they actually had still in the system. And it's easy to say, oh, well, just rewrite it, for production. Yeah, but what if it's tied into like 7 other systems? What if rewriting it breaks those systems? What if those systems are also prototypes that are themselves integrated into other systems? It's a giant domino effect of, oh God, what the hell is going on? And I have a feeling that maybe not to that extent, but something similar to that situation is what ended up happening, to where one prototype system had to be modified, which led into another system that had to be modified, which led to another system that had to be rewritten, and everything connected to that had to be rewritten.
Yeah.
And people out there aren't really going to generally understand how much there is behind a game. I don't do video game programming. I do business applications. I do server applications. I do agentless cluster management software. And there's millions of lines of code to that, and probably several modules or libraries connected to those that are they themselves in the millions of lines of code. Games are way more complex. Way more complex. And it's a very slippery slope that you can't stop when you start sliding on.
Yeah. So, we made it through the stream.
Beat this horse to death.
So, it's going to be very important now for VR to start showing the intent of the producers newsletter and sticking to it, and it's going to be overly important as well for the community is to remind them if you see them slipping, and drifting away. But it looks like
as long as you can communicate effectively.
Yeah, as long as you can communicate effectively, not like Lexa.
Yeah. Don't. Everyone needs the bumper sticker. Don't be like Lex.
So it's definitely going to be looking up, and obviously, we can't expect things to happen overnight. The newsletter came out on the 14th of October. The stream was on the 24th, I think, of October, where they did the art stream. So it's not going to happen overnight. These changes aren't going to happen overnight. It's going to take time to, they've got to figure things out and start
change
changing.
Doesn't happen overnight.
Yep, exactly.
But meaningful change takes even longer.
Yeah. So, stay positive, and knock on their door if you feel like something's not going correctly and everything, and point it out to them, because that's the thing as well. You've only got two sides to the coin, especially when it comes to games. You've got people that love it and they love the game designers or the team behind it, and they'll they'll talk it up and this, that, and the other. And you've got the other ones, the haters, that just hate it, period. But there's no one there that actually has the guts to call them out when they're doing something obviously within reason and being smart about it and polite and arguing.
I beg to differ. Well,
yeah, we do. We call them out and we explain why we call them out. But there has to be more of this. Yeah. They've owned up to mistakes now, and it's up to us. If we want this game to succeed, we're just as responsible as well. If we just sit back and go yay, 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 or nay, 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 then we're to blame as well. So it's basically like VR said, we're in this together, so let's be in it together. A bit of information for next month's show. We are looking into doing a community end of year show. It won't be at the end of the year; it will be on the beginning of December. We're trying to see if we can get that organised, because obviously it's just 4 weeks away. So we'll have to see if we can get that organised in this short time. And if so, that's what we'll be doing. We'll have an end of year show. We'll look back at 2020. Talk about each other's channels and talk about things that were interesting in the year of 2020, and you can come out, hang out with us, and so
I'll be drinking.
Okay,
we will be drinking.
We'll all be drinking. Hey, remember that show when we had Drunk Yarn on?
Yeah, the SOB would.
That's every year.
Anyway, thanks for.
I plan to have a glass of bourbon on that show.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us. I will actually link, because I don't think anybody did from the team here.
Find your own damn links. Your servant.
There's the link to the stream that they recently did. If you haven't watched it, go check that out. It's definitely worth watching, especially for people that are interested in game design and things like that. Give it a go. And we'll see you all in 4 weeks' time. Take care.
Bye-bye, guys.
And VR, we're going to hold you to that producer's newsletter. Trust us. We'll hold you to it.
Meanwhile, Aaron's going to hold it to himself.
What, the producer's newsletter?
Yep, you're going to sleep with it. You're going to tape it to your chest.
I'm going to memorize it. Word by word. Syllable by syllable.
Please. Please don't. Because every time you say hardcore, I'm going to slap you. Oh, wait. No, memorize it.